There is a moment, and I believe many of you have felt it, where you are standing in the middle of a perfectly ordinary day, maybe washing dishes, maybe sitting in your car before you go inside the house, and something stops you. Not a noise, not a person, just something inside you, a quiet voice, a feeling you cannot quite name, and instead of pushing it away like most people do, you actually listen to it. That moment, that small, quiet moment is not nothing. That is everything. Most people go through their entire lives never truly meeting themselves. They live on the surface. They react, they perform, they follow the noise of the world around them, and they never once stop to ask the most important question a human being can ask. Who am I really? Not what do I do? Not what have I achieved? Not what do others think of me? But who am I underneath all of that? I have spent my entire life studying the human soul. And I can tell you with full confidence and with great warmth, the people who ask that question, the people who dare to sit with it, they are rare. They are the ones the world quietly depends on, even when the world does not know it. You may not have a degree in psychology. You may not have read a single book about the mind. But if you have lived long enough, loved deeply enough, and suffered honestly enough, and most of you in this room have done all three, then you have been doing the work of self-awareness your whole life, even if nobody ever called it that. Today, I want to talk to you about 5 signs. 5 signs that show you are more self-aware than most people around you. And I promise you, by the time we are done, many of you are going to recognize yourselves in ways that will surprise you. Because self-aware people often do not know how self-aware they are. That is part of what makes them who they are. Let us begin with the first sign. You feel things deeply and you do not apologize for it. Now, I know that for many of you, especially those who grew up in a time when people were told to toughen up, to not show emotion, to just get on with it, feeling things deeply was sometimes treated like a weakness. Maybe someone told you that you were too sensitive. Maybe you told yourself that. Maybe you learned to fold your feelings up very neatly and put them in a drawer somewhere deep inside you. But here is what I have come to understand after a lifetime of working with the human heart. Feeling things deeply is not a weakness. It is a form of intelligence. A very old and very important form of intelligence. When you feel grief and you let yourself feel it, really feel it, without running from it or drowning it in busyness, you are doing something most people are afraid to do. When you feel joy and you let it move through you like sunlight, without immediately worrying that it will not last, that is courage. Real courage. Self-aware people feel the full range of human emotion, and they have learned, often through hard years and difficult seasons, to not be afraid of what they feel. They do not always like what they feel, but they do not run from it either. They sit with it. They learn from it. They let it teach them something about themselves. I want you to think right now about the last time you cried, not necessarily in front of anyone, maybe alone. In the car again, or at night, or watching something on television that hit you right in the chest unexpectedly. You did not plan for it. It just came. And instead of immediately wiping it away and moving on, part of you stayed with it for a moment. Part of you wondered what it meant. Why that particular thing on that particular day broke something open inside you. That wondering, that gentle, honest wondering is self-awareness. That is you paying attention to yourself. That is you treating your own inner life as something worth noticing. Most people do not do that. Most people stuff it down, change the channel, pour another cup of coffee and move on. And I understand why. Life is busy. Life has always been busy, and feeling things takes energy. It takes a kind of bravery that nobody gives you a medal for, but you have been doing it anyway. Many of you have been doing it for 50, 60, 70 years, feeling things, sitting with them, learning from them, carrying losses that changed you, holding onto loves that shaped you, surviving things that you were not sure you would survive, and then quietly, gently, finding your way back to something worth living for. That is not ordinary. Please hear me when I say that. That is not ordinary at all. The second thing I want to say about this first sign is this. People who feel deeply are also usually people who feel for others deeply. They notice when someone in the room is hurting, even when that person is smiling. They can sense the weight behind someone's words. They sit at the bedside. They make the phone call. They remember the anniversary of someone's loss even when everyone else has moved on. This is empathy, and empathy does not come from a textbook. It comes from having lived inside your own pain long enough to recognize it in someone else's eyes. Now, I know some of you might be sitting there thinking, well, maybe I feel too much. Maybe that has been a problem for me. Maybe I have given too much, carried too much of other people's burdens, and not left enough for myself. And that is an important thing to notice. That is in itself a sign of self-awareness, knowing that you have a pattern, recognizing it, being honest about it. We will come back to that thought. Because the question of boundaries, the question of how we love without losing ourselves, is one of the most important questions a deeply feeling person ever has to wrestle with. But for now, I want you to simply sit with this. If you are someone who feels things deeply, and you have never quite been able to explain why that matters, let me be the one to tell you today, it matters more than you know. It is one of the clearest signs that you have been doing the quiet, invisible, incredibly important work of knowing yourself from the inside out. And that is where everything begins, not out there. In here. Now let us move to the second sign. You have made mistakes in your life, serious ones maybe, and instead of just blaming the world or the people around you, you turned the light on yourself. You asked the hard question. You said, what was my part in this? What did I do? What could I have done differently? That is one of the most difficult things a human being can do. And most people never do it. Not really. It is so much easier to point outward, to say it was them, it was the circumstances, it was bad luck. It was the economy, the family I grew up in, the people who let me down. And sometimes, yes, those things are true. Sometimes we really were dealt an unfair hand. Sometimes people really did hurt us in ways we did not deserve. But the self-aware person does something different. They hold two things at the same time. They say, yes, that happened to me and it was not fair. And also, what did I learn from it? How did I respond? Where did I close off or push away or repeat a pattern I had repeated before? That ability to hold two truths at once, that is wisdom. And it is hard one. It does not come cheap. Many of you in this room have lived through things that would have broken a person who was not paying attention to themselves. Marriages that were painful. Children who went in directions you never expected. Jobs that disappeared. Health that changed without warning. Friends you lost. Parents you watched leave this world. And through all of it, you kept going. Not because you were numb to it, but because somewhere inside you there was a willingness to keep learning. To keep looking honestly at your life and asking, what is this trying to show me? That is not weakness. That is the deepest kind of strength there is. I think of a woman I knew many years ago. She had lived a long, full, difficult life. She had made choices she regretted. She had loved people who hurt her, and she had hurt people she loved. And when I sat with her and we talked, she did not make excuses. She did not pretend. She looked at her life the way you look at an old photograph, with honesty and with tenderness at the same time. She could see herself clearly. And that clarity, that gentle, unflinching honesty, had given her a kind of peace that most people spend their whole lives searching for. That peace is available to you too. It always has been. The third sign is one that surprises people when I mention it, and that is this: you are comfortable with silence. Not everyone is. In fact, most people are deeply uncomfortable with silence. They fill every quiet moment with noise. The television goes on the moment they walk into a room. The radio plays in the car before the engine is even warm. The phone is in the hand before the eyes are fully open in the morning. Noise, noise, noise everywhere all the time, and I understand why. Silence can be frightening, because in the silence you hear yourself, and sometimes what you hear is hard. Sometimes in the silence the grief comes, the regret comes. The questions come, the ones that do not have easy answers, and so people run from the silence because they are running from themselves. But you, if you are the kind of person who can sit on the porch in the early morning and just let the world be quiet around you, if you can drive without the radio sometimes and just think, if you can lie in bed at night with your thoughts and not immediately reach for something to distract yourself, then you have something precious. You have a relationship with your own inner life. That relationship is the foundation of everything, because you cannot know yourself if you never spend time with yourself. And I mean real time. Quiet time. Time where nothing is being produced, nothing is being achieved. You are simply present with who you are. Many people in this generation, your generation, learned to be busy as a virtue. Hard work was the measure of a good person. Rest was almost something to feel guilty about, and I respect that deeply, I do. That generation built things. That generation endured things. That generation held families and communities together through some very hard decades. But I also want to say gently that the busyness sometimes became a way of avoiding the inner life. And some of you know exactly what I mean when I say that. You know because you have felt it. The moment the house got quiet after the children left, or after a loss, and suddenly there you were, face to face with yourself, and you were not quite sure who you were meeting. That moment of meeting yourself, even when it is uncomfortable, even when it is lonely or a little frightening, is one of the most important moments of a human life. And the fact that you did not completely run from it, the fact that you sat there, even for a little while, and let the silence speak to you, that matters. That is the third sign. That you have learned, perhaps slowly, perhaps imperfectly, to be present with yourself, to not be a stranger to your own inner world. I want to pause here for a moment and say something directly to you, something I feel very strongly. You are not too old for this work. I have heard people say, well, at my age, what is the point of looking inward now? What is the point of trying to understand myself better when so much of life is already behind me? And I want to say to that, no, absolutely not. The second half of life, and for many of you that is exactly where you are, the second half of life is not the closing of something. It is the opening of something. It is the time when the noise of ambition quiets down a little, when the pressure to perform and impress begins to lift. When you finally have the permission, if you choose to take it, to ask who I actually am beneath all the roles I have played. The parent, the spouse, the worker, the provider, the strong one. The one who held it all together. Those are real and honorable things, but they are not all of you. And the beautiful, quiet invitation of this season of life is to discover what is still waiting inside you. What has always been there, patient and quiet, waiting for you to finally turn toward it. And I believe with everything in me that what is waiting there is not emptiness. It is not regret. It is not just the sum of your mistakes and your losses. What is waiting there is something whole, something true, something that was placed inside you before you ever drew your first breath, and that no amount of time or hardship or disappointment has been able to destroy. Some people call that the soul. I call it that too, and I believe the soul speaks to us constantly, quietly, persistently, lovingly. It speaks to us in our feelings, in our dreams, in those strange moments of stillness where something inside us just knows. It speaks to us in the things that move us to tears without warning, in the causes that make our hearts burn, in the moments of beauty that stop us cold and make us feel, just for a second, that there is something much larger than ourselves holding all of this together. That is not imagination. That is not sentiment. That is the voice of something real and something wholly reaching toward you. And here is what I want to say with great urgency and great tenderness at the same time. That voice gets easier to hear the more honest you become with yourself. The more you practice that quiet, courageous honesty of looking at your own life without flinching, without pretending, without performing, the clearer that voice becomes. This is not easy work. I will not pretend it is. There are things inside all of us that we would rather not look at. Old wounds that we have carried so long they feel like part of us. Old stories we tell ourselves that keep us small. Old fears that dress themselves up as wisdom so that we stop questioning them. I think of a man I once knew, a strong man, a man who had worked hard his whole life and never once asked anyone for help. He came to me late in his life, and he sat across from me, and after a long silence he said, "I think I have been angry my whole life and I never knew why." That sentence cost him something. Saying it out loud cost him something real, because for decades he had told himself a different story, that he was just serious, just focused, just a man who did not tolerate nonsense. But underneath all of that, underneath all the strength and the silence, there was a little boy who had never been told he was enough. And that little boy had been driving the car for 60 years without anyone ever knowing he was behind the wheel. When that man finally saw it, really saw it, he wept. And it was not a weak thing. It was one of the bravest things I ever witnessed. Because seeing yourself clearly, truly clearly, takes more courage than almost anything else this life asks of us. And this is where God enters the conversation. Because I truly believe, that we were not meant to do this alone. The journey inward is not a solo journey. It was never designed to be. We were made for something. We were made by something. And that something has never stopped watching over us, never stopped reaching toward us, never stopped whispering, "Come closer, I am here. You are known, you are loved." You do not have to be afraid of what you find inside yourself, because I am already there, and I have already seen it all, and I love you anyway. That is not a small thing. That is everything. And the self-aware person at some point in their journey stops trying to run from that presence. They stop pretending they can figure it all out on their own. They stop being too proud or too wounded or too tired to reach back toward the one who has been reaching toward them all along. This is not weakness. This is the most mature, the most honest, the most courageous thing a human soul can do. To say, "I cannot carry this alone. I was not built to carry this alone." And I am finally ready to stop pretending that I am. And I want to talk to you right now about something that I know is sitting in the room. Something that many of you have been carrying for a very long time. Something heavy. Something you maybe have not said out loud to another living person in years, maybe ever. Unforgiveness. I am not saying that word to make you feel guilty. I am saying it because I care about you, and because I have seen, over and over again, what that weight does to a person over time. How it slowly, quietly takes something away from you, how it dims the light, how it makes the world smaller, how it keeps you tied to a moment that has long since passed, to a person who may not even remember what they did, while you are still in the prison of it every single day. I want you to think of someone right now. You already know who it is. The name came to you before I even finished the sentence. Maybe it is someone who hurt you deeply, a parent who was cold or cruel, a spouse who betrayed you, a child who walked away, a friend who abandoned you when you needed them most. Or maybe, and this is the one I want you to sit with especially, maybe the person you have never forgiven is yourself. That one is the hardest. That one lives the closest. Because you remember everything you did, every failure, every moment you were not the parent you wanted to be, the partner you promised to be, the person you believed you could be. And somewhere along the way you made a quiet decision, maybe without even realizing it, that you did not deserve to be fully free, that you had to keep paying, that the guilt was your penance and you would carry it until the end. My dear friend, listen to me now. That is not what you were made for. Guilt that leads you to honest change is a gift. But guilt that you carry long after you have already changed, long after you have already suffered enough, long after God Himself has already said you are forgiven, that guilt is a lie. And it is a lie that steals your joy, your peace, your presence, and your future. You cannot be fully self-aware and still be hiding from yourself. And unforgiveness toward others or toward yourself is a form of hiding. It is a way of saying, I am not ready to be fully free. I am not ready to let this go. I am not ready to trust that there is something good still ahead of me, but there is. I promise you there is. I know some of you have been through things that I cannot even imagine. Real pain, deep betrayal, loss that cracked you open and changed the shape of everything. And I am not standing here telling you that what happened to you was acceptable or that it did not matter. It mattered enormously. You matter enormously. But the wound that was done to you does not have to be the last word about your life. That is what forgiveness really is. It is not saying what happened was fine. It is saying I am choosing my future over my past. I am choosing to open my hands and let this go, not because they deserve it, but because I deserve to be free. And every single morning that you wake up, you have that choice again. You do not have to do it perfectly. You do not have to feel it completely before you choose it. You just have to be willing, just willing. That small, quiet willingness is enough to begin. God does not need you to have it all figured out before He steps in. He just needs you to turn, even an inch. Even just the smallest turning of your heart toward Him, and He is already moving toward you. He has been waiting. He has been patient. And His love for you is not based on your performance or your perfection, or how well you have managed to hold yourself together. It is based on nothing more and nothing less than the fact that you are His. And He has never, not for one single moment of your life, looked away from you. Not when you were at your worst. Not when you were lost. Not when you made the choices you are still ashamed of. Not when you felt completely alone in a dark room wondering if any of it meant anything. He was there. He has always been there. And He is here right now in this moment as you listen to these words. And that is not religion. That is not doctrine. That is the deepest truth I have ever found after a lifetime of searching the human soul. That we are known. That we are held. That we are loved with a love that does not flinch and does not tire and does not walk away. So here is what I want to leave with you today. Here is what I want you to carry home in your chest like a warm coal that keeps burning long after this moment has passed. You are more self-aware than you know. You have been doing the quiet, invisible, enormously important work of knowing yourself your whole life. Through every loss and every lesson and every long night and every morning you chose to get up and try again. That work was not wasted, not one moment of it, but do not stop now. Do not stop now when you are closer than you have ever been to the truest, freest, most complete version of yourself. Do not put the work down just because the world has gone quiet around you, or because you think it is too late, or because nobody is watching or applauding. God is watching. And He is not watching to judge you. He is watching because He loves you and He is proud of you, and He is rooting for you with everything in Him. So forgive the person you need to forgive. Starting today, not tomorrow, today, speak the truth you have been swallowing. Ask for the help you have been too proud to ask for. Sit in the silence and let yourself be found. Let yourself be known. Let yourself finally fully be loved. You have carried enough, you have proven enough, you have survived enough. Now it is time to live, really live. With your whole heart open and your hands empty and your face turned toward the light. That is not the end of your story. That is where the best part begins.